I broke down in tears at the altar when my parents didn't come. The reason they weren't there is unbelievable. Honestly, I never thought I'd share something so personal, but I need to unburden myself. For as long as I can remember, I've been the quiet, overlooked one in my family. My name is Emily. I'm 22 years old, and a few weeks ago I married Nathan, the most wonderful man. What should have been the happiest day of my life turned into a painful reminder of how insignificant I seem to be to my parents. Growing up in Mapleton, Wisconsin, I learned early on how to rely on myself. My parents, Mark and Karen, often praised my independence. At first, I took it as a compliment. I was the kid who didn't ask for much or cause any trouble. But as I got older, I realized their admiration wasn't genuine. It was just an excuse for their neglect. My older brother, Ryan, was always the golden child. As kids, he was athletic, outgoing, and constantly brought home trophies from soccer games or school competitions. I didn't mind much back then. He was my big brother, and I looked up to him. But everything shifted 5 years ago when Ryan married Ava. She entered our family like a whirlwind. Now 30, Ava was already larger than life at 25 when I first met her. She was confident, charismatic, and so lively that she commanded attention wherever she went. My parents were captivated by her almost immediately. At first, I liked Ava too. She was bubbly, fun, and the kind of person who could light up a room just by walking into it. But soon, I started noticing a pattern. Family dinners would inevitably revolve around her. Her job, her friends, her haircut, her plans. Every holiday turned into Ava's personal spotlight. Whenever I shared something about my life, like a good grade or a new hobby, it was brushed aside like background noise. One Thanksgiving, during my junior year of college, I excitedly announced that I had secured a competitive internship I'd worked hard to get. I expected at least a little enthusiasm. Instead, my mom gave me a quick smile and nod before turning to Ava to ask, "Did you pick out those invitations for your party yet?" It stung, and moments like that happened more often than I care to admit. I learned to keep my head down and stay quiet. I told myself that if I stayed the good, easygoing child, maybe they'd eventually notice me too. Then came Ava's birthdays. Every year, she threw extravagant parties with themes, decorations, catering, and once, even a magician. My parents treated these events like major holidays, spending weeks helping her plan, finding the perfect gifts, and hyping up the celebration as if it were the event of the year. Meanwhile, my own birthdays were marked with a card and maybe a quick dinner at the local diner. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. It was just a birthday. But when you're sidelined year after year, it starts to hurt. When Nathan and I got engaged, I thought this time would be different. This was my wedding day, one of the biggest milestones in my life. I thought, surely this time they'd show up for me. I even chose a date that wouldn't conflict with anything else. Every detail was planned with my family in mind because I wanted them there. I wanted them to celebrate me for once. Nathan and I didn't want anything grand. We decided on a small, intimate garden wedding just outside Mapleton, surrounded by close family and friends. The venue was stunning, with lush flowers everywhere and fairy lights strung through the trees. It was exactly what I had dreamed of. Simple and meaningful. As the date approached, I noticed something that filled me with dread. Ava's birthday was scheduled for the week before my wedding. At first, I brushed it off. It's just a birthday party, right? It happens every year. My wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event. But the more I talked to my parents, the more obvious it became where their priorities lay. Whenever I brought up the wedding, they seemed uninterested. I'd mention the florist or seating arrangements, and my mom would cut me off to gush about Ava's party plans. "Did you hear Ava rented a food truck for her party?" she said one evening, her voice brimming with excitement. "She's even having live music this year. Isn't that fun?" I forced a smile and replied, "That's nice, Mom. By the way, I finalized the wedding catering." "Oh, that's good, sweetie," she said absent-mindedly. "Did I tell you Ava's looking at balloon arches? I think they'll be beautiful." This happened every time I brought up the wedding. The closer we got to the date, the less interested they seemed. Then, a week before the wedding, my parents asked me to stop by their house for a quick chat. I thought they wanted to discuss last-minute details or offer help with the ceremony. I arrived smiling, excited to talk about the big day. But as soon as I sat down, I could feel the tension in the air. My mom wouldn't look at me, and my dad cleared his throat nervously. "Sweetheart," my mom began cautiously, "we need to talk about something." My heart sank. My dad chimed in, trying to sound reasonable. "We might not be able to make it to your wedding." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. "What?" I asked, stunned. "What do you mean you might not make it?" My mom sighed, looking uncomfortable. "Ava really needs our help with her birthday party. She's been so stressed, and we promised to help her set everything up and keep it running smoothly." I stared at them, struggling to comprehend what I was hearing. "You're telling me you're skipping my wedding for Ava's birthday party?" "It's not like that," my dad said, shaking his head. "Emily, you've always been so independent. We thought you'd understand." "Understand?" I repeated, my voice rising. "It's my wedding, and you're choosing her party over me?" My mom gave me a small, apologetic smile that only fueled my anger. "We'll try to make it to the reception, sweetie. You know how much Ava depends on us." Their words hit me like a blow. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I left their house in tears, barely able to focus on the road as I drove home. When I told Nathan what had happened, he was livid on my behalf, but I felt numb. This was supposed to be my day, the one time I got to be the priority. After years of being overlooked, even my wedding wasn't enough. A small part of me still hoped they'd change their minds. Maybe, on the morning of the wedding, they'd realize how wrong they were. But, deep down, I knew better. For the first time, I was starting to see my parents for who they really were. That evening, I sat on the couch with Nathan, my hands trembling from the confrontation. I kept replaying their words in my head. They might not make it to my wedding. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Who skips their own daughter's wedding for a birthday party? Nathan sat quietly beside me, his arm draped over my shoulders as I stared at the floor. Finally, I broke the silence. "I don't understand," I said, my voice raw. "Why would they do this? I'm their daughter. How can they think this is okay?" Nathan sighed, clearly choosing his words carefully. "Emily, they've been putting Ava first for years. I hate that it's come to this, but are you really surprised?" I blinked, my throat tightening. "I don't know. I thought this time would be different. I mean, it's my wedding, Nathan. It's not just another day." My voice cracked before I could finish. Nathan pulled me closer, resting his chin on my head. "You have every right to feel hurt, Emily. But listen to me. This isn't about you. It's about them and their inability to prioritize what really matters. You've done nothing wrong." "I just wanted them there," I whispered. "I wanted my parents to be proud of me, just this once." "I know," he said softly. "The week leading up to the wedding was one of the hardest I'd ever experienced. I went through the motions of finishing last-minute preparations, trying to focus on the happiness I should have been feeling. My bridesmaids were amazing, staying with me, helping with decorations, and taking care of the little things I couldn't manage. They did everything they could to lift my spirits, But every time I looked at the seating chart and saw the two empty chairs reserved for the mother and father of the bride, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. At first, I clung to the hope that they might change their minds. Maybe they'd realize how ridiculous they were being and show up at the last minute. That tiny sliver of hope was what kept me going. I didn't tell anyone else what had happened. Not my friends. Not Nathan's family. I couldn't bear the humiliation of admitting that my parents had chosen Ava's birthday party over my wedding. The day before the wedding, I finally received the confirmation I had been dreading. While I was helping set up decorations at the venue, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "We hope the setup is going well, sweetie. Let us know if you need help with anything at the reception, in case we can swing by after Ava's party. Love you. Swing by." My wedding had been reduced to something they might stop by if they had the time, like it was a casual errand. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. "Everything okay?" one of my bridesmaids, Lily, asked as she approached with a box of centerpieces. I quickly locked my phone and shoved it into my pocket. "Yeah, it's fine," I mumbled, forcing a smile. "Just my mom checking in. She seemed to believe me, and guilt pricked at me for lying. But how could I admit the truth? That my parents didn't care enough to be there. That they were too preoccupied with Ava to show up for one of the most important days of my life? That night, Nathan and I held a small rehearsal dinner with close friends and his family. I had dreaded this moment, knowing my parents wouldn't be there. As we sat around the table, listening to Nathan's parents share sweet, heartfelt stories, I couldn't stop the tears from welling up. At one point, Nathan's mom, Mary, gently placed her hand over mine. "Emily, you're going to be such a beautiful bride tomorrow. We're so happy to be here for you and Nathan." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." It wasn't fair. I should have been hearing those words from my mom and dad. After dinner, Nathan walked me back to my apartment. The air was cool and quiet, but my thoughts roared like a storm I couldn't calm. He glanced at me as we stopped outside my door. "Emily, are you okay?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not okay. Tomorrow is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and all I can think about is the fact that my parents won't be there." He took my hands in his, looking at me intently. "Listen to me. Tomorrow isn't about them. It's about us, about starting our life together. I know this hurts, but I promise, we're going to have a beautiful day." I nodded, but his words didn't fully sink in. How could they, when the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had made it so clear I wasn't a priority? I barely slept that night. All I could picture was Ava's birthday party. My parents laughing, smiling, celebrating as though nothing was wrong, while I walked down the aisle to face two empty chairs. The morning of the wedding arrived. I woke up consumed by an overwhelming feeling of dread. My bridesmaids arrived early, buzzing with excitement as they helped me prepare. They tried to fill the room with light-hearted chatter and laughter, but the heaviness in my chest wouldn't fade. "Are you okay?" Lily asked softly as she curled my hair. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were swollen, my face pale. "Yeah," I lied again. "Just nervous, I guess." When we arrived at the venue, my breath caught as my eyes fell on the two empty chairs at the front. They stood there, glaring at me like a taunt, while my bridesmaids flitted around, ensuring every detail was perfect. I quietly slipped away to the dressing room. Locking the door behind me, I sank into the corner and let the tears come. This day was meant to be the happiest of my life. Yet all I felt was heartache. I had no idea how long I stayed there before I heard a gentle knock at the door. "Emily!" Nathan's voice was soft but concerned. I quickly wiped my eyes. "Come in." Nathan entered, crossing the room swiftly to kneel in front of me. "Hey," he said gently. "What's going on?" Shaking my head, I muttered, I don't think I can do this, Nathan. I don't know if I can walk down that aisle and pretend everything is fine. He cupped my face in his hands, his gaze locking with mine. Emily, you don't have to pretend. I know this hurts, and I know it's not fair. But when you walk down that aisle, I'll be there waiting for you, and that's all that matters. This is our day, our start, and no one can take that from us. His words grounded me, pulling me back from the edge. I took a shaky breath and nodded. You're right. I just wish it didn't have to feel like this. I know, he replied softly. But you're not alone in this. You have me, you have our friends, and you have everyone here who loves you. He helped me to my feet, and as I stood in front of the mirror one last time, I tried to push the pain aside. I reminded myself that today wasn't about my parents or Ava's party. It was about Nathan, about us, and the life we were building together. With that, I walked out of the room, ready to face the day, even though my heart still ached. The moments before I walked down the aisle felt surreal, like I was caught between a dream and a nightmare. My bridesmaids had already gone ahead, leaving me alone at the garden entrance. The soft strains of music floated in the air, mingling with the quiet murmur of guests settling into their seats. I gripped my bouquet tightly, the stems pressing into my palm as though holding tighter would keep me steady. The sun shone brightly, filtering through the trees and casting dappled light on the ground. But all I could focus on were the two empty chairs in the front row, labeled Mother of the Bride and Father of the Bride. They sat untouched, glaring reminders of what was missing. They should be here. My parents should have been sitting there, smiling at me, whispering about how proud they were. But they weren't. I let out a shaky breath as the wedding coordinator appeared beside me, her face glowing with excitement. It's time, Emily. You look perfect. Perfect. The word felt wrong. I didn't feel perfect. I felt hollow. Still, I nodded because there was no turning back now. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped into view. The quiet buzz of conversation faded, and every eye turned toward me. I forced myself not to look at anyone except Nathan, standing at the altar. There he was, waiting for me, his hands clasped and a calm, reassuring smile on his face. His steady presence anchored me, pulling me toward him. I focused on him, forcing my feet to move forward, one step at a time. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't block out the sight of those empty chairs. They felt louder than the music, heavier than the flowers in my hands. I blinked hard, swallowing the lump in my throat. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, yet I couldn't shake the ache spreading through me. As I passed my Aunt Linda, her teary smile caught my attention. Her expression radiated love and support, and, for a fleeting moment, the weight on my chest lifted slightly. Step by step, I continued until I finally reached Nathan. He took my hand, the warmth of his touch grounding me. His thumb gently brushed against my palm. A silent reminder. I'm here. You're not alone. You look beautiful, he whispered, his voice low and meant only for me. I gave him a faint smile, blinking back tears. I wanted to focus on him, on us, and on this moment we had waited so long for. The officiant began to speak, but his words blurred in my ears. My mind kept drifting back to my parents. Were they at Ava's party now? Were they laughing, celebrating, completely unbothered by the fact that they weren't here? Did they even think about me? When it was time for our vows, Nathan went first. His voice was steady and full of emotion, breaking through the haze in my mind like sunlight cutting through clouds. Emily, he said, gazing directly into my eyes. From the moment you came into my life, you've shown me what it means to love and be loved. You are my best friend, my partner, my everything, I vow to stay by your side through all the joys and challenges. You are my forever." The tears I had been holding back threatened to spill, but this time they weren't from sorrow. They were because of the love and certainty in Nathan's voice. When it was my turn, I drew a shaky breath and looked at him, focusing solely on him. "Nathan," I began, my voice trembling, "you've always seen me, even when I felt insignificant, even when I felt invisible. You reminded me who I am, and gave me a place where I felt safe and loved. I promise to love you as fiercely as you've loved me, to stay by your side, and to share my life with you completely." His grip on my hands tightened, and I saw the love reflected in his eyes. For the first time that day, I felt a flicker of calm. We exchanged rings, and I watched as Nathan slid the band onto my finger. The moment felt like a promise, real, solid, and unshakable. The officiant smiled and spoke the words I had been waiting to hear. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Nathan leaned in, his hands softly cupping my face as he kissed me. The crowd erupted with applause, and a small smile crept onto my lips. I had done it. We had done it. The ceremony itself became a blur. Hugs, congratulations, flashes from the photographer's camera. I smiled and thanked everyone, but the ache inside me never fully faded. I kept glancing at the chairs, hoping my parents would arrive at the last minute. They didn't. At the reception, I tried to push everything aside. The garden looked magical, with fairy lights strung overhead and candles casting a gentle glow on each table. Nathan's parents, Mary and John, were wonderful, ensuring the guests were comfortable and having a good time. At one point, Mary approached me with a plate of cake. "You haven't eaten, sweetheart. You need to take care of yourself today." I took the plate, offering a grateful smile. "Thank you, Mary." She gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "We're so proud of you, Emily. You're a beautiful bride, and we're lucky to have you in the family." Her words caught me off guard. Proud of me? My heart clenched painfully as I nodded and thanked her. Later, I needed a moment alone. I slipped away from the crowd and found a small table in the corner of the garden, out of sight. My phone buzzed in my purse, and for a fleeting second, I hoped it was a message from my parents, maybe telling me they were on their way. I pulled out my phone and unlocked it. There was no message, just a new social media post from my mom. It was a picture of her and Ava at the birthday party, standing beneath a huge balloon arch. My mom was smiling broadly, holding a champagne glass, while Ava stood beside her like a queen. The caption read, "Celebrating Ava's big day. So proud of her for throwing an amazing party." My stomach twisted. My parents had skipped my wedding for that. They were celebrating, smiling, and laughing while I stood here, alone, on one of the most significant days of my life. The tears came before I could stop them. I shoved my phone back into my bag and quickly wiped my cheeks, but the ache in my chest felt unbearable. "Emily?" Nathan's voice startled me. I looked up to see him approaching, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine," I said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. He knelt beside me, his hand brushing my arm. "You don't have to say that. What's wrong?" I shook my head as more tears fell. "It's my parents. I saw the pictures. They're at the party, having the time of their lives. They didn't even call, Nathan. They didn't even try." His expression softened, and he gently wiped a tear from my cheek. "Emily," he said quietly, "they don't deserve to ruin this day for you. They don't deserve a single thought." I looked at him, my voice trembling. How could they do this? How could they choose her over me? "I don't know," he admitted. But you're not alone. Look around. These people are here because they love you. I love you. That's what matters." I took a shaky breath and let his words sink in. He was right. Even though it didn't erase the pain, I wasn't alone. I had Nathan. I had people who were here because they wanted to celebrate us. For the rest of the evening, I held on to that thought, even as the hurt lingered like a shadow I couldn't quite escape. The day after the wedding, I woke up feeling like I was moving through a fog. The whirlwind of the ceremony and reception was over, but the heaviness in my chest remained. Nathan made breakfast, sliding a plate of eggs and toast in front of me with a small smile, but I barely touched it. "Emily," he said gently, "you need to eat." I stared at the food, picking at it with my fork. "I just don't understand, Nathan. How could they not be there? How could they do this and act like it doesn't matter?" Nathan leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Because admitting they're wrong and taking responsibility is something they won't do." Tears stung my eyes. "But they're my parents. I've always tried to be the good one, the one who doesn't cause trouble or ask for attention. Doesn't that count for something?" Nathan reached for my hand. "It should, Emily. But their actions say more about them than about you." His words were comforting, but the hurt lingered. I couldn't shake it. The image of the empty chairs haunted me, and my parents' laughter at Ava's party echoed in my mind, as if it were the most important event ever. I needed answers by mid-afternoon. I couldn't endure it any longer. I grabbed my keys and told Nathan, "I'm going to talk to them." He didn't stop me. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I need to handle this alone." The drive to my parents' house felt endless, though it was only 15 minutes away. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my heart pounding as I rehearsed my words. "You missed my wedding. Do you understand what you've done?" When I parked in the driveway, their car was there, and faint laughter drifted from inside. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the door, my nerves buzzing like static. I knocked twice before entering, as I always did. They were in the living room, my mom curled up with her phone, and my dad scrolling on his tablet. My mom looked up, her smile fading slightly when she saw me. "Emily," she said cautiously, "we weren't expecting you." I stood there, fists clenched at my sides. "We need to talk." My dad glanced up from his tablet, looking uneasy. "Is everything okay?" he asked. I scoffed, unable to hide my frustration. "No, everything's not okay. I came here to ask why you chose to miss my wedding for Ava's birthday party." My mom sighed, putting her phone down as if this conversation was merely an inconvenience. "Sweetheart, we told you Ava needed us. She was stressed, and we promised to help her." Ava was stressed? My voice rose, anger bubbling to the surface. "She has a party every year, Mom. Every single year. And you're saying her birthday was more important than my wedding?" "It's not about importance," my dad interjected quickly, trying to sound reasonable. "We thought you'd understand. You've always been independent, Emily. You never needed us the way Ava does." I stared at him, stunned. "Do you hear yourself? I'm independent because I had to be. You were too busy making Ava the center of everything to notice me." My mom's expression hardened. "That's not fair, Emily." "Not fair?" My voice shook. "You're right. It's not fair. It wasn't fair that I walked down the aisle and saw those empty chairs where you should have been. It wasn't fair that on the most important day of my life, I felt like I wasn't enough for you. And it's not fair that you don't even seem to care." For the first time, they were silent. My dad shifted uncomfortably, while my mom crossed her arms defensively, as if to protect herself. Finally, she muttered, We're sorry you feel that way, but what's done is done. You can't keep holding on to this." Her words hit me like a slap. I had come for an apology, a sign they understood how much they'd hurt me. But they didn't. They couldn't even take responsibility. I shook my head, my voice quieter now. "I'm not clinging to anything, Mom. You made your choice. You picked her over me without hesitation. You missed my wedding. I don't think I'll ever get over that." My dad opened his mouth, like he wanted to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel as tears streamed down my face. I had foolishly hoped they'd say something, anything, that showed they cared. But all they gave me were excuses. When I finally got home, Nathan was waiting on the porch. He stood as I approached, his face full of concern. "How did it go?" he asked softly. I shook my head, my voice cracking. "They don't understand, Nathan. They don't care." He didn't say a word. He just wrapped me in his arms, holding me close as I cried. For the first time, I allowed myself to grieve, not just their absence at my wedding, but years of being overlooked, of never feeling like I was enough. When I finally pulled back, I searched his face for the reassurance I needed. "I don't know if I can forgive them," I whispered. "You don't have to," he said firmly. "Not now, not ever, if that's your choice. You don't owe them anything, Emily." Hearing that shifted something inside me. For so long, I believed I needed their approval, that I had to earn their love. But Nathan was right. I didn't owe them a thing. That night, I sat down with an empty notebook and began writing. I poured out everything: the years of feeling invisible, the heartbreak of their absence, their refusal to acknowledge how deeply they hurt me. I wasn't writing for them. I was writing for myself. By the time I set down the pen, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't magically healed, but I had taken the first step toward freeing myself from their hold. For the first time, I realized I didn't need them to see me. I had people who already did. In the days after confronting my parents, everything felt strange and heavy. I kept waiting for a call or a text, some kind of follow-up where they'd finally say what I needed to hear. Maybe a real apology, or an admission that they hurt me. But my phone remained silent. Nathan stayed close, sensing my struggle even when I didn't express it. On the third day after that confrontation, I sat on the couch, gazing blankly out the window. Nathan sat beside me, gently rubbing circles on my back. "Are you okay?" he finally asked, his voice soft. I shook my head. "I'm not sure. I feel like I'm waiting for something, even though I know it won't come." "Emily," Nathan said quietly, "you don't have to wait for them. You don't need their approval to move on. You have me, you have our friends, and so many others who showed up for you." I looked at him and managed a weak smile. "I know you're right. It's just difficult." He didn't press me any further, letting me sit and untangle my thoughts. That afternoon, things shifted when my Aunt Linda called. She was always straightforward, the one person in the family who wasn't afraid to speak the truth. "Emily," she said as soon as I picked up, "I heard about your parents missing your wedding. Is that true?" Hearing her say it out loud hurt all over again, but I made myself answer. "Yeah. They said Ava needed them for her birthday. They promised her they'd be there." There was a long pause before Aunt Linda sighed in frustration. "I can't believe them. That's absolutely disgraceful." "I'm so sorry, Emily. You deserved much better." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you. I honestly don't know what to do with all this. It's just a lot." "Well," she said sharply, "I know what I'm going to do. They need to understand how wrong they are." "Wait, Aunt Linda," What do you mean? But before she could answer, a notification chimed on my phone. I checked it and saw a message in the family group chat. Aunt Linda had written, "I can't believe Mark and Karen skipped Emily's wedding for Ava's birthday party. That's completely unacceptable. This family needs to get its priorities straight." I froze, staring at the screen. I hadn't expected her to say anything so publicly, and my heart pounded as the group chat erupted with messages. Cousin Rachel: "Wait, is this true? They missed the wedding?" Uncle David: "What's going on? Someone explain." Grandma: "I'm shocked, Emily. I'm so sorry. If I could have traveled, I'd have been there front and center." Messages kept flooding in. Some cousins were stunned, others were furious. I felt a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. I hadn't wanted to involve the whole family, but seeing everyone support me gave me an unexpected sense of validation. Then a private message popped up from my mom. "Mom, Emily, I can't believe you let Linda expose our personal business. We don't deserve to be made villains over one mistake." My hands shook as I read her words. One mistake? That's all they thought it was. A simple, forgettable mistake. I took a deep breath and replied, "Me. I didn't ask Aunt Linda to say anything. People are upset because they see how much it hurt me. That's on you, not me." She didn't reply, but I could feel her anger in the silence. It didn't matter. For once, I refused to let her make me feel guilty for something that wasn't my fault. What surprised me most was that later that evening, my brother Ryan reached out. He called, and when his name appeared on my screen, I hesitated before picking up. "Hey," I said cautiously. "Emily," Ryan started, his voice quieter than usual, I just wanted to check on you. How are you holding up?" I struggled to find the right words. "I guess I'm okay." "Why are you calling, Ryan?" He sighed deeply. "Because I should have said something sooner. I know what Mom and Dad did was wrong. At first, I didn't want to get involved, but now I feel awful for not standing up for you." I gripped the phone tighter. "Ryan, they chose Ava over me, and you let it happen. You stayed silent, and that hurt too." "I know," he admitted softly. "You're right. I should have spoken up. I didn't realize how bad things were until I saw the pictures. Ava's party was over the top, and all I could think about was you and the wedding. I'm sorry, Em." His words caught me off guard. For years, Ryan had stood by silently, letting Ava soak up all the attention while our parents indulged her. Hearing him acknowledge it, really seeing it, felt like a small step toward healing. "I appreciate you saying that," I finally said. "But it's going to take time for me to forgive all this." "I get it," he replied. "I'm trying to set boundaries with Ava, too. I don't want this to happen again." After we hung up, I sat on the couch for a long time, processing everything. Ryan's words didn't undo what had happened, but they gave me hope that maybe things could change. At least someone in my family was beginning to understand the damage that had been done. That night, Nathan and I sat on the back porch. The air was cool and still. I told him about Aunt Linda's messages, my mom's reaction, and Ryan's call. "It's such a mess," I admitted, staring up at the stars. Nathan wrapped his arm around me and pulled me close. "Maybe it is," he said. "But you don't have to fix it. Emily, you've carried enough of this already." I rested my head on his shoulder. "I know. I'm just so tired of it all." "Then let it go," he whispered. "Focus on the people who showed up for you, the ones who love you. That's what really matters." For the first time in days, a flicker of peace settled in my heart. He was right. My parents might never understand the pain they caused, and they might never take responsibility. But that wasn't something I could control. What I could control was how I moved forward, and I was ready to start letting go.